Hi, everybody. This is our first episode of our new show, Indie Cafe 2, which goes worldwide. Um, and I'd like to start off by first thanking Zach Martin of Zach Martin Rocks and New HD for inspiring us to do this show. The co hosts are Patrick Bamburak, myself, Spencer Drate, with Judith Salavetz. I'll tell you a little about, you should know that some little background about the co host. Patrick Bamburak is the producer of the show series. He's also a fantastic musician and also has his own new HD radio series, which is doing very well. Myself and Judith are legendary album designers, 45 designers. We're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archival collection of our own, by the way, which is very unusual. No other designer has that. Plus, we're in AIGA and MoMA permanent collections. And we've designed for 23 Rock Hall inductees. And we were recently nominated for the National Design Award, 2019 National Design Award for Smithsonian and Cooper Hewitt Museum, which is a very big honor. So that's about the co-host a little bit. I also want to thank Carol Kay of Chaos Productions for leading us for the inspiration of the show. I want to lead in a little bit showing you, first of all, this is the Bob Marley Legend album, which was produced by Island Records, which I actually repackaged a lot of the Tough Gong line from vinyl to CD, hired by Chris Blackwell for Island Records. This is the legend. Why I'm bringing this up is this is probably the most famous CD he did for Island. It's a compilation of the great songs. On it are two songs that are in the film, which we'll be talking about. And of course, this is what we're really talking about. Bob Marley and the Wailers, the Capitol Sessions 73 package, which is released this month. And I want to show you, first of all, this is the inside of the package. You get a DVD, you get a CD. And the booklet, okay, this booklet, the liner notes inside the booklet written by John Masouri, who's on our show tonight, also a fabulous liner notes. This packaging is very informative. And of course, we all know that Bob Marley was a mover and shaker. I would call on the lines of John Lennon and Bob Dylan, very famous for reggae. And now I can introduce you to a short bit with Martin Disney, who's the film director, and John Masouri, who's the author of 5 major reggae books, plus wrote the liner notes for the packages being released. So let's start off with Martin and the concept from the beginning, how it evolved, and where we are now with the film.
Well, good evening, and thank you. It's a very long story, but I'll cut it short because it began 30 years ago when I was hauled in to go through the what was in the vault when Polygram bought Island. And this was what pertained to Bob Marley. I did other work for them concerning their major, the rest of their archives too. But there was one shred of footage that was on film. It wasn't on video, and I couldn't find it. It didn't match up to anything else, and I only saw there was about 3 minutes of it, and maybe less, and it was black and white, but obviously it was shot on video. And because there'd been various films made about Bob that didn't come out, there was much repeat information and different formats, and it intrigued me. But by the time my contract expired, I didn't have time to check it out. And I provided most of the footage for the for the program Time Will Tell, which was made entirely of archive material, and that was released in '91 to mark the 10th year of Bob's passing. and I did get the opportunity to go looking. I in the intervening years, because nothing actually, there was no interest in anything Marley, bizarrely, for the next 6 years, 7 years. Almost nothing was made about Bob. Ever since, there's been a constant stream. But in '98, I was asked to go and I was asked to research the program on Catch a Fire, the making of Catch a Fire and the classic album series. I'd in the meantime found out more about this footage, and that it was in fact filmed by Denny Cordell, who was a legendary record producer and maverick, who had his own outside broadcast truck in 1971-72. And so knowing that this footage existed and we needed footage from that period, I went in search of it. Denny very sadly had died in 1995, taken well before his time. I think he was only 51 years old. And I contacted his son, Barney, and Barney had never seen the footage but had heard about it. And he asked me to go and find it, which I duly did. I didn't find all of it at first, but we had enough to make the program in the classic album series. And I've been involved in, I then went on to find the rest of it, and I've been involved in that footage on behalf of the estate of Denny Cordell ever since. So it's been proposed as a film 3 times before, but for various reasons it didn't happen, a standalone production, because what we had in the end was something approach 7 hours and 45 minutes of original footage.
Wow.
And there was of that there was a live mix that lasted around 90 minutes, and then footage from 2 cameras. So anyone who's familiar with the footage will be aware of the special effects that were put on there. It's enabled us to cut around an awful lot of them, because there were rather a lot. So on the final film that you see, there are some. So that's how it came to pass that finally there was enough in place. There were enough lawyers involved to do all the clearances, and I set about making the film with the full blessing of the Cordell estate. Barney Cordell, Denny's son, was the producer on it, and we began in earnest editing in October last year. It took 5 months, and just the editing process. The digital cleanup took a lot longer, because the footage itself is not the original. The originals, the masters were lost. Whether they were lost after the rather, because, there's an interesting story, a rather tragic story, though fortunately no one was hurt. But the archive was left after I'd finished racking everything up and identifying everything, was left in a storage place in North London, close to the main arterial route into North London. And there was an overpass, a flyover as we call them, a 6-lane overpass. And it was next to that, and the Irish Republican Army left 100 kilograms of explosives in a van underneath the flyover, and effectively it knocked over the building.
Oh my God!
That was April the 11th, I think, 1992. And I was called by the storage place to come and have a look, and it was a surreal scene.
Mm.
I saw the 2-inch masters then, and it's possible that they may be returned to a guy in New York who looked after them. But that they, after Denny died, no one knew what had happened to the masters. And through a process of elimination, I managed to track down as much as we will probably ever find, though it's not impossible that there is another 2.5 hours of footage somewhere from the other
Amazing.
2 of the 4 cameras that we used to record the event.
Great story. Amazing story. It's getting good reviews, isn't it, Martin? It's getting good reviews.
Well, it's interesting looking around to see the different, because there's a couple of different press releases, and so there's a couple of different takes on it. It's interesting to see those and which journalists have actually seen it or not, or whether they've just amalgamated the various press releases. What is deeply, deeply satisfying is reading the fan sites, because they are blown away by it. They, I am humbled, quite frankly, because there are no critics quite like the fans.
Right,
And,
you're exactly right.
They are so kind about it. They're blown away about the quality of the sound, the quality of the imagery, and the way that the film itself rolls. And because it is both an album on vinyl as well as the DVD, and it's there for streaming as well. It's not something you're going to be able to get away from for a very, very long time.
It's just such a focused, organic look inside of a session where there's musicians who are sort of communicating to each other in some sort of intuitive and otherworldly level that we seldom see in music today. It's just such a incredible look into the process for me, and that's one of the things that struck me. What were your thoughts about that when you were watching the creative process in action on the film and making those decisions of how to cut it?
It was an extraordinary experience to be immersed in that footage for that long. It was a privilege. Because it does, in the order that you see it, it's not the order that it happened on the day, but the order of the order of the songs is what we believe the order was during the tour. They always began with Peter Tosh, and Peter Tosh 400 years, and they make all their mistakes in the first section, the first 4, 5, 6 songs. And when they stop and rehearse Rastaman chant, they do an a cappella bit where they're rehearsing with Joe Higgs, and they're getting it right.
Now I think the next person in line is our next guest, John Masouri, who wrote the liner notes, which is in the film booklet, and also a prominent reggae author of 5 books. And John, tell us about the connection with the film, and also after that, maybe mention about your books.
Well, I could start off by telling you when I first met Martin and also Barney Cordell. I had a phone call from Martin because we have a mutual friend in Los Angeles, Roger Steffens, and Roger had told him that Aston family man Barrett was staying with me that day or over that weekend. This is about 13, 14 years ago.
Wow.
And so Martin and Barney arrived with cameras, and I was there with Family Man, and they interviewed Family Man about the Smile Jamaica film. And unfortunately, he'd had rather a lot of ganja that morning, and his memory wasn't great. But so I haven't seen the footage since. But that was the beginning of my association with Martin and Barney. And also, of course, poignantly, Aston family man Barrett is the only surviving member of the Wailers from that film.
Wow.
And he's being honored by the Jamaican government later this month.
Oh, great.
Finally, after all these years, for his
Yeah.
contributions to reggae music.
Wow. That's an amazing. And tell us about writing the liner notes to this film.
Well, that's where the liner notes came from, really, that Martin knew that I was very familiar with the story because I'd written Family Man's autobiography with him over quite a long period of time, maybe 8-9 years off and on. We spent working on that book, and during that time, we spent a lot of time together. Listening to music. I would join him on tour with the Wailers in Europe and up and down in America. And because the Wailers band were touring so much that it was easier for me to go on tour with him and spend time with him on the tour bus and in hotels than it was to wait for those periods where he wasn't touring. So we saw a lot of each other over that period, and I learned a tremendous amount. And in my opinion, Family Man is the chief architect not only of Bob Marley's music but also of the roots reggae genre. To me, he's the prime musician of that genre, of the spiritual roots music from Jamaica.
Wow, that's interesting.
He not only backed Bob Marley, he played on Peter Tosh, Legalize It. He played on Bunny Wailer's Black Heart Man. He played on seminal records by Burning Spear, by Dennis Brown, by Yabby U, by so many of the greats from Jamaica that he truly deserves that title as far as I'm concerned. And I think that in a fairer situation, he would have been credited as the co-producer on most of Bob Marley and the Wailers music. He's also a very talented multi-instrumentalist. Apart from playing unique and powerful bass guitar, he plays rhythm guitar, lead guitar, all manner of organs, piano. He really is a genius of sound.
Wow.
And I think he's very underappreciated, very underrated. And I'm very happy that he's finally being honored.
That's great. That is really great, finally. Wow, that's a great story. Tell us also about some of you've done 5 amazing reggae books. You're a historian. I don't know how to describe you. At the top of the line in reggae.
Well, the books are an offshoot, really and truly, because I am primarily a music journalist, and I've been covering all aspects of reggae music for the past 35 years.
Wow. Well, there you are.
Reggae, ska, dancehall, dub, lovers rock, all of the various offshoots. And I've had the privilege of interviewing so many of the greats, from Prince Buster and Elton Ellis, right up to Chronics and Coffee and Vibes Cartel and so many of them. So and I've written for magazines mainly in the UK, in Germany, in France, in Japan, and that's how I've made my living all this time. But so the books are an additional thing, and my first book was with Family Man. That's called Wailing Blues, and that tells the story of the Wailers from he joined Bob Marley, which was in 1968. He and his brother Carlton, they did a James Brown cover called Black Progress at Randy's, and this is while they were still in the Upsetters, and they stayed with Bob Marley right up until his death. And the book is not only about their musical journey, but also the various machinations that happened to them at the hands of the record company and so on, especially in the years following Bob Marley's death, when they were pretty much airbrushed out of the picture entirely. You won't see their picture in the Bob Marley Museum. You won't see them credited for the massive contributions they made.
Wow.
And I'm not just talking about the Barrett brothers, but I'm talking about the other key Wailers who made such a great contribution to this music, which is known and loved throughout the world. It was the work of a group of people, and it wasn't just Bob Marley alone. So that's what that book was about. And then after that, I wrote the biography of Peter Tosh, who appears in the Capitol Record House session, the film that we've been talking about. And I've also written various anthologies of my writing, not only about the younger Marleys, Damien, Stephen, Kamani. I've interviewed all of them over the years.
Wow.
But also the younger generation of roots and musicians and artists from Jamaica in the last 10 years, which is Protege and Chronix and Janine, who differ from their predecessors because they're very educated, they're college educated, they are very articulate, and the cultural element to their work is very strong. And so it's a direct correlation really to the music that went before them in the 70s.
I mean, as a group also, the Wailers with Bob Marley, there was an energy level, right? I mean, just all of them together brought in a certain energy, right, John?
Absolutely, absolutely. The chemistry between great musicians. We see that same synergy in great bands like James Brown's, JB's, you know, like the Meters, well, whatever. I mean, it's when musicians really have that belief and that feeling between them. I mean, what I would say as well about the Wailers is that from being around them, I can honestly say that these people set out to make a difference. They wanted their music to change the world, and this was not lip service.
Right.
They knew that their music could change individuals and the way that individuals thought about the world and thought about their own behavior towards other people. And so if they could get to these individuals and they could make them think and they could give them strength to be themselves, to dare to dream of a better future, then that's how you change society, because they didn't want to do it by politics, and they wanted to do it by almost of osmosis, if you like, and the power of the music. I mean, there is so much I remember from my time with Family Man, but one of the things was in the late 60s when the music became more cultural and a lot of the artists and musicians were beginning to read about their cultural history, read about Emperor Haile Selassie, read about the glories of an African past, that I knew that Family Man struggled to read. And I asked him, how did he respond to that? These other people were reading history books and so on. And how did you cope with that? How did you join in, essentially? And he said to me, I listened to what they were saying, and I found the chords and the notes to express the spiritual depth that they were talking about. So he was the one, the master musician, who found the notes, who found the chords and found the progressions to express in sound what they were searching for and what they were talking about. So his contributions to the music is absolutely profound.
So, as a music writer, you're often filling in the gaps, telling the stories to that wider world out there, the things that people haven't seen on film or on video or haven't heard. You know, it's giving a complete picture of stories that we haven't all witnessed. As you're working on the liner notes for the film and the album, the whole package, were there things that you saw in the footage that was enlightening to you as a writer? Things that in the communication between the musicians in the performance that actually spoke to what was only just sort of the legend of words before this footage is discovered. How enlightening was that for you as a storyteller?
Right. There was there has been bootleg footage of that same closed door session circulating for quite some time, and it's a poor quality, and it's not edited, and but nevertheless, I'd seen it, and I forgot to mention that I've also written a book called Simmerdown, which is about the original vocal trio of Bob Marley, Bunny Wailer, and Peter Tosh, telling their story from their formation around the time of Jamaican independence, right up to when they finally split up, which was in 1975, supporting Stevie Wonder at the National Stadium in Jamaica in front of 20,000 people. I mean, imagine.
Wow.
But so when it came to writing about the 1973 tour, I did a lot of research. I interviewed quite a lot of people about that tour, and I saw this kind of bootleg footage, and it is extraordinary watching them so relaxed and at ease with themselves. And even more so in Martin's finished version, because it's so clean. It's and the way they put it together is wonderful. But to give you an example, I'd read and I'd been told by people that when they came to England promoting Catch a Fire earlier that year, they'd opened their set at the Speakeasy in London with Rastaman Rastaman Chant, which is the track that Martin was talking about. And this is like an invocation. They're chanting, Babylon, your throne comes down. It's the kind of thing that they probably sang and heard sitting in the Rasta camps in Kingston. When they were studying with Mortimer Plano and so on, and embracing Rasta for the first time. And they used this song as a kind of cleansing medium to prepare the ground for the rest of the show, that they would gather together with the three different types of Rasta drums and chant and play the drums, and and to bring down the spirits, if you like, to actually bless and consecrate the stage. And watching that in this film is magical. It's Peter, it's Bob Marley, and it's Joe Higgs sitting there together, playing these hand drums and chanting. it's mesmerizing. So that's the bit I always hold in the very highest regard.
Having seen the bootlegs out there before and then seeing this in high quality, in seeing it sort of in clear focus, it sounds as if, this is more than just a clear, crisper version of a musical performance. This is really an insight into the spirit and the cultural impact of these artists and this music.
Absolutely. I would say that the main focus of their music was to promote Rastafari to the world. That's what they were about.
Yeah.
That did not preclude commercial success. It didn't mean to say they couldn't have hits, but essentially, they, in Family Man's words, they were taking the reggae gospel to the four corners of the earth. That's what he is often said. We were spreading the reggae gospel to the four corners of the world. And he's continued doing that all of his musical career.
Wow.
And that's what Bob Marley was about. And so, yes, you can still sing love songs. Yes, you can sing songs of rebellion and frustration and hardship. But basically, the essential message is one of Rastafari, love, peace, harmony.
I was reading about you and your accomplishments and what you've done, and so I was as I read all this stuff, all this information about you, I was wondering, for example, I was wondering, where did you develop this passion and this love for reggae, and why reggae, and what does it mean to you, reggae music? Where does this passion come from?
Well, when it started for me, there was no reggae music. There was ska and there was rocksteady, but no one used the word reggae at that time. And I was 15. Well, no, first of all, when I was 11, I saw Millie sing My Boy Lollipop on British television. And that was my first crush, on Millie. And and at 15, I was invited to shebeens, blues parties, we used to call them, which are these illegal house parties which Caribbean people used to have. And they used to play music that was brought over from Jamaica and eat Jamaican food and enjoy themselves. And they were always at a weekend, and they go on all night. And so I was 15, and I'd sneak out the house to go to these things, and I'd get back late at night, and my family would have locked me out the house. I'd have to sleep in an outside toilet, until morning. Yes, it was these places where I think the writer Ferdinand Dennis, he's written about how if you weren't from the Caribbean and you were at these places, it's like you were an outcast, a cultural outcast from your own culture. And I was, because I'm from poor, working class, white, family. But my grandfather was gypsy, and a very close mentor of mine. My uncle was a refugee from the war, and so we weren't too popular. So I found a home amongst Caribbean people, and I was accepted to a degree, and I've always had this kind of respect for Caribbean culture since those days. But the music, we were never told what we were listening to, but I loved the music. And I remember hearing Wailers songs like Nice Time, even before I knew who it was singing. And this was in 68, 69. And then there was an explosion of reggae music in Britain. It was all in the charts. It was very popular. It was very mainstream. It was played on the radio every day. There were artists like Desmond Dekker, Bob and Marcia, the Pioneers. I mean, so many reggae acts made a commercial breakthrough at that time, until the skinheads appeared and spoilt the party, really. And then reggae kind of fell off the map, and we weren't hearing it on the radio, seeing it on the television anymore, until 1973. Well, first came The Harder They Come, the film The Harder They Come, which gave us a totally different take on what we thought Jamaica was like. We realized it wasn't a tropical paradise. There was hardship, and we saw footage of ganja farmers and exploitative record producers, and this was a whole different picture of Jamaica, which was very eye-opening. And right in the slipstream of that came the Wailers promoting Catch a Fire, and they appeared on British television singing Stir It Up and I think Concrete Jungle, and Bunny was there playing conga drums, Peter was there, and Bob Marley was there, and the Barrett brothers, and Wire Lindo, who plays keyboards in the Capitol Record Tower film. And it was mesmerizing, absolutely mesmerizing. And I fell in love with them all over again from that from that moment. And they changed the genre. That's when cultural reggae music really started. And they and Burning Spear and Abyssinians were in the vanguard of that.
The importance of the song.
Get Up, Stand Up?
Yeah, Get Up, Stand Up.
Yeah. Well, there are different stories about this, but the way I understand it, it was partly written by Bob Marley and Esther Anderson when they were on they were island hopping in the Caribbean with Chris Blackwell, and they'd been to Haiti, and Bob and Esther had been left behind, and they'd been arrested, and they spent the night behind bars or some time behind bars, and generally been abandoned by the rest of the group. And the genesis for the song was started then by them in the plane back to Jamaica. But the version that appears on Burning also features Peter Tosh, and his verse is very fiery. It's quite controversial, and that came about in New York in 1973, in between supporting Bruce Springsteen at Max's Kansas City. And they went to the studio in New York, and they finished the track and put on Peter's verses, which were really incendiary, and that's what made the track. And this all happened just a couple of months or a few months before the Capitol Record Tower sessions. And in fact, it was the last track to be finished on Burning, which came out just a couple of days, before that Capitol Record session.
Yeah, Get Up, Stand Up. We were just talking about that, Martin. Get Up, Stand Up. Tell us your take on it. And it's a very important song.
Oh, it's extraordinary. Well, for a start, they fluff it to begin with and start again, and so Bob restarts it. They rip through it, and I think because they've had a really hard time in the previous few days, that Bob takes all his frustration and anger out on that one track. And out of 200, because I should have added earlier that the Capitol session was it was never the Capitol session. It was just the Capitol footage, and it was bootlegged for many years. So the super fans know about it, and it's reckoned out of 200 recordings of Get Up, Stand Up to be the best there is.
Wow.
And yeah, out of 200, that's all the bootlegs, all the lives, all the everything. It's magnificent. It sends shivers down my spine still.
Yeah, it's quite a powerful song.
What makes it, Martin, the most powerful version in I guess your opinion, or
it's
critics'
impassioned.
opinions?
It's impassioned, and Peter and Bob between them are it's almost like scat vocals that they're singing over each other. They have lyrics in there that aren't in the general lyrics that are known, and that they intertwine, and that they complement each other. It's a song of anger, and they both express themselves magnificently.
Martin, you describe then Get Up, Stand Up as more than just a song, but it's an anthem for a movement.
Yeah.
And that, in seeing that performance, it seems as if there's even still a struggle within the artists in terms of defining the breadth and scope of that movement, that they're still trying to even come to terms with what they've created, right?
I think so, yeah. Well, of course, I mean, Peter went on to be very, very strident later, well, throughout his career, but particularly at the One Love Peace concert, which very nearly cost him his life soon afterwards. Though, I mean, one story I did hear from someone who's close to them was that the song was actually about royalties, but I'm not sure whether to believe that or not. It's an anthem, and as I have said before, you hear Bob's music in supermarkets, you hear Bob's music on the radio, you hear Bob's music in clubs, and it's always uplifting. But wherever there is oppression, wherever there is suffering, you hear Bob's music. Yeah. It draws people together. It's a form of expression, or it helps people form their expressions. It helps people give vent to their own frustrations and beliefs and suffering.
Yeah, I think, I related, as I said before, to him as what we call a mover and shaker, as John Lennon and Bob Dylan were in music. And that's what really drew me to Bob Marley in the reggae area, because he was just that thing, right?
Yeah. Not that, well, that wasn't approved of by the powers that be in Jamaica at the time, and I mean, I don't know whether I at the time appreciated how radical it was, because he certainly was. I mean, he went on to perform when at the Zimbabwe independence celebrations, and paid for that himself to go out.
Wow. Really?
He paid for everything. They took everything with them. The
wow.
PM, I don't know whether they took any lighting. I should imagine they did. But he paid for the entire thing to perform at the independence ceremony of Zimbabwe.
That's a great story. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm just curious how question is both to both our guests. What's going on with reggae music today, and what do you think is going to be the future of it, if there is a future to reggae music?
Reggae music is more popular now than it's ever been. It's I mean, I saw that touring with the Wailers. I saw I saw them perform to Eskimos, Native Americans. I saw, I saw them perform to so many different ethnic groups, and but also, you know, some of the best reggae music in the world today is coming from New Zealand, is coming from Hawaii, is coming from Germany, from Switzerland, from France, from Spain, from Poland. I mean, it's incredible. Africa, you know, reggae music is huge compared to what it was during Bob Marley's lifetime, and it's spawned so many variations, right up to jungle, drum and bass, grime here in England. Um, Hip hop is full of reggae and dancehall influences. Afro pop and Afrobeat, which is so popular right now, coming from the African continent. I mean, those artists are racking up, you know, 30, 40, 50 million hits, you know, on YouTube. And so much of their music is rooted in reggae and dancehall. So this is a real golden era for reggae music. There are so many up and coming artists, bands, promoters, sound systems, writers, filmmakers, exhibition curators, you know, artists, you know, visual artists, you name it. I mean, reggae music is now truly, truly a global phenomenon. And
Wow.
so I think in terms of what Bob Marley and the Wailers set out to achieve, job done.
Right.
It talks about
Right.
the struggle of everyday living.
Right.
It talks about the struggles against oppression. It talks about the futility of war. It talks about getting back closer to nature, having respect for the natural world.
Mhm.
It talks about so many things. It talks about natural medicine, natural healing, and to get away from a reliance upon pharmaceuticals. It talks about farming. It talks about working together, cooperatives and collaborations and unification. It talks about putting aside religious differences and coming together as human beings. It's a hell of a lot more than just an infectious beat that makes you
So
feel
it's
good.
yeah. So it's music for humanity, is what you're
Exactly.
saying. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hmm.
And it's also the United Nations passed a resolution not long ago to preserve reggae.
UNESCO.
UNESCO.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes, UNESCO.